President al-Assad stresses that any direct aggression on Syria will only solidify the country's basic principles and independent decision. Russia stresses that the Western plans to intervene militarily in Syria represents a clear violation of the UN Charter and international law. Our armed forces continue uprooting terrorism, killing and wounding dozens of them in several areas. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our news for today. President Bashar al-Assad received a Yemeni delegation comprising party leaders and members of parliament. During the meeting, President al-Assad stressed that the threat to launch a direct aggression against Syria will only strengthen Syria's commitment to its national principles and independent decision, pointing out that Syria defends itself against any aggression. The president added that the Syrian people and army are determined to combat terrorism, supported by Israel and the Western countries in service of fracturing the country's unity. The president referred to the new public consciousness in the Arab world, which is a basic element in confronting the conspiracy targeting the whole region. Members of the delegation expressed their full support of Syrian people and leadership in confronting any foreign attack on its soil. Russia stressed that the plans set up by some Western leaders to launch a military strike against Syria represent a clear violation of the UN basic principles and charter. The Russian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Gatilov, during his meeting with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in La Haye, that he discussed with him the political and military situation in Syria. Gatilov pointed out that it is crucial to exhaust political and diplomatic means by allowing the UN experts to conduct their investigation and the potential use of chemical weapons and finalize their findings through submitting a report to the UN Security Council. For his part, Ban Ki-moon expressed support for allowing the UN experts to finish their jobs, stressing that there is no alternative for the political solution for the crisis. The Russian Security Council stressed that the Syrian government cannot be accused of using chemical weapons without submitting a hard evidence, warning that launching a military operation by the West against Syria will drive the whole region into chaos and strengthen al-Qaeda network in the region. Meanwhile, a military source at the Russian General Military Command said that Russian military will work on renewing its military vessels in the Mediterranean. The source added that the current situation in the region makes it more urgent to introduce some reinforcements to the Russian Navy ships stationed there. The source added that within the few upcoming days, an anti-marine military ship will join the Northern Fleet, followed by Moskova missile carrier vessel in the Black Sea. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi today warned against any military action against Syria. The Chinese news agency Xinhua quoted Wang as saying, "Any foreign military intervention will contradict the UN Charter, as it may spread chaos in the Middle East," adding that a political solution is always considered as the only realistic means for the crisis in Syria. He called upon all sides to show restraint and calm in dealing with the Syrian crisis, adding, "No one should meddle in Syria or preempt the investigation results on the alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria." The Chinese minister said that his country is watching the situation in Syria closely, pointing out that the Chinese side strongly rejects the use of chemical weapons in Syria and supports making a UN objective, independent and honest investigation. Iran renewed its warning against launching military aggression by the United States against Syria. Colonel Muhammad al-Jaafari, head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, said that the Zionists should know that a military aggression against Syria will lead to the extermination of Israel soon. Colonel Jaafari added that the United States and some of its allies have been planning to deal a blow to the resistance axis by supporting the armed terrorist groups with different types of weapons, and they are trying now to launch military action against the Syrian people after the failure of their terrorists. He pointed out that the American army had already suffered defeat in Iraq and Afghanistan, and this time their failure will be even greater in Syria. For its part, the Venezuelan National Assembly condemned the American threats to use force against Syria, stressing that this represents a violation of the UN Charter, calling for finding a political solution for the crisis in the country. The Assembly issued a solidarity statement in which it said that Syria is being exposed to a media misinformation campaign with regard to the use of chemical weapons, something which leads to the distortion of facts on the ground and justify military intervention in Syria. The Assembly emphasized that the terrorists supported by some regional governments seek to destroy Syria and its legitimate political leadership. The US President Barack Obama had announced that he had not taken a decision yet on how to retaliate on the alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria, adding that any step taken will be a warning. Obama pointed that his administration holds the Syrian government for the chemical attack in Damascus countryside, adding that the potential attack will be limited and does not seek to topple balance between the Syrian army and the opposition. Obama stressed, however, that any direct military intervention in Syria will not help solving the situation on the ground. For the second time this month, the New York Times website has gone down because of the successful skill of the Syrian Electronic Army in breaking into the security system of the paper. The company said it believed today's outage was a result of external attack. The New York Times website was unavailable to readers on Tuesday afternoon following the attack on the company's domain name registrar. The attack required employees of the Times to stop sending out sensitive emails. Syrian Arab Army units destroyed terrorist dens in Al-Qaboon area and other villages in Damascus countryside affiliated with so-called Al-Islam Brigade during a series of operations, killing and wounding dozens of them. An official source said that a number of terrorists were killed, including a sniper, during the clashes with the terrorist group in Al-Qaboon and Jobar neighborhoods. A military source said that units of the armed forces pursued the armed terrorist groups in Dar al-Balad, killing dozens, including Saudi terrorists Mahmoud al-Fahili and Jaber Sroor. Other army units destroyed terrorist gatherings in 3 villages in Al-Qunaitira countryside, killing and injuring a number of terrorists. An official source said that the army units controlled the southern farms of the city of Palmyra in Homs countryside after eliminating the last gatherings of terrorists there. The source added that dozens of explosive devices planted in the farms by the terrorists were dismantled. Other units of the armed forces destroyed terrorist hideouts in Tal al-Umari, Al-Rastan and Ad-Dar al-Kabira in Homs countryside. Earlier, army units restored security and stability to the eastern and southern neighborhoods in the city. Meanwhile, a military source said that units of the armed forces pursued the armed terrorist groups in Al-Hamidiyya and Al-Warsh neighborhoods, killing all their members. Now to latest business and market news, but after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back. Governor of the Central Bank of Syria, Adib Mayale, affirmed that the bank is still financing the imports and sells the US dollar to the banks and exchange institutions with 175 Syrian pounds. The Central Bank of Syria has repeatedly intervened in the market to keep the Syrian pound's price against the foreign currencies stable. Minister of Industry Kamal Ad-Din Tame asserted that the ministry will support the Syrian industry and provide the industrialists with basic needs, which include the necessary lands for new investments. During a visit today to the new places of the Arabic medical company Tamico and to the National Company of Rubber, the minister said that the ministry continues to grant the facilities to the industrialists and help them to cover the local market with basic needs. Director General of Textile Establishment asserted the importance of completing the administrative reform project and the project of developing the industrial public sector through adopting a social plan to evaluate the government support experience which is allocated to develop the industry and to allocate the subsidies for restructuring and supporting the national industry. The General Establishment of Sugar announced that it has adopted a manufacturing plan estimated at 1,400,000 tons of sugar beet for the upcoming year, as the estimated amount of sugar may reach about 130,000 tons to cover the local market need. The establishment has said that it produced about 10,000 tons of sugar during the current year, as the Director General of the establishment asserted that the sugar company in Salhab has delivered the sugar beet crop and it produced about 117,000 tons of sugar beet. Minister of Agriculture demanded to form a work team to develop the national plan of animals breeding. The manager of the livestock project said that the national plan for breeding the farm animals aims at increasing the animals' production by implementing a work strategy which includes services and development goals. Brent crude prices fell from the highest settlement since May 2011 after government data showed that the crude stockpiles gained the most in 4 months in the U.S. Futures declined 1.2% to reach $115 a barrel. European stocks rose, snapping a 3-day drop as investors awaited data on U.S. economic growth surged to an 11-year high. U.S. index futures also climbed. Japan's shares, on the other hand, swung between gains and losses. Gold eased 0.5% to around $1,410 an ounce after gaining 1.2% to a 3-month high in the previous session. Finally, the US dollar strengthened to a 2-week high against the euro before a US report showed that the analysis said will show economic growth accelerated, backing the case for the Federal Reserve to reduce the stimulus. this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our site at syriaonline.sy. God bless Syria.